Hey, I'm Rich here, and over the last year, thanks to the internet, I've been able to sell tens of thousands of copies of my music, get millions of streams, and reach hundreds of thousands of fans, all within the comfort of my bedroom. This is because of the DIY music industry. The DIY music industry really thrives on certain physical spaces and certain outlets of distribution that allow artists within this aspect of the industry to thrive. So today we're going to talk a bit to some artists that are in the DIY industry and some professionals that are also in the DIY industry alike. First, we found ourselves in New York City, and I scheduled an appointment with an artist manager at a boutique firm, but our footage wasn't great, so we just FaceTimed him instead.
So we are seeing another evolution in the DIY industry after, the streaming revolution. Once the, distribution was democratized and made it so easy to get your music out there and people listening to it, the hurdle became making that jump from online to the physical world. And what we're seeing now is a really large rise in small cap and medium cap venues that are giving these artists the ability to start making that transition from online to physical.
This sounded great in theory, but I wanted to see it in practice. So once we headed back to Syracuse, we sat down with local band Shallow Alcove to get their take on their artistry and the resurgence of these mid and small sized venues.
Hey, I'm Griffin.
I'm Dan.
I'm Nick.
We
play in a band
called Shallow Alcove.
Shallow Alcove.
When we all met each other about a year.
So our first single was actually released by Dan, and it was on a site called Bandcamp, which is
It's pretty similar to SoundCloud, except I do think it's a little different, the type of music that's put up. I would say that SoundCloud is primarily based in more pop and rap, at least a couple years ago. And then Bandcamp was kind of the indie band platform, mostly rock and just the people that were coming through these house scenes. So yeah, I threw it up on a site called Bandcamp, just kind of as
it's free to put it up there,
free
right?
platform, yeah. So just as a place to have it out. I didn't think anything too seriously of it until I met Griffin and Nick. I also think that a lot of our audience hasn't even come from online. It's just these DIY spaces make a name for themselves pretty quickly, and they gather a consistent audience. There were probably at least 30 people at Space Camp who went every week, and I had no other relation to them besides Space Camp. And so I think just the locals and the people who constantly show up are absolutely.
I think it's a pretty healthy balance. I mean, in an ideal scenario, the venue is good enough, has a welcoming environment enough where people want to go and discover new acts, and they go to a place where they feel comfortable being at and super supportive of the bands that come through, and then they end up falling in love with the acts that do come play. And I think that's, if that's not what venues strive for, that's what they should be striving for, because that's, I think that there's such a, mutual relationship, between these venues and the artists. That's what made Space Camp and places like the End and places like that so special, was who they booked, and then the environment that they were able to provide for the fans to enjoy and kind of connect with the musicians on such a personal level.
So there you have it. Not only has it become easier than ever for artists to distribute their music online to thousands of potential fans, but due to the creation, revival, and resurgence of small and medium cap DIY venues, artists can now convert these online fans to physical fans and democratize the music industry to a level that has not been seen before. The only question that remains is, who's got now and who's got next?